This lecture provides you with a general overview of what is arguably the most important site of ancient Greece, and that is the Acropolis that was located in Athens. And this is a really important site for us to study because in many ways we can best understand Greek culture through its temples. The temples very much embodied Greek culture, communicating to us both political and religious beliefs. Now, like many Greek cities, Athens was a city that was built around a hill, and on top of that hill was located the Acropolis. So the Acropolis was placed on an elevated site. And that's what the name is referring to. Akros means top, polis means city. On the top of the Acropolis, on top of this hill, we have varying structures, some of them economic, but the rest of them religious temples. The most important of these is the Parthenon. And the Parthenon was dedicated to the patron deity of Athens, after who Athens was named, Athena. Now this is an interesting concept we have here. We have a temple dedicated to the city's patron deity, placed at the center of the city, elevated up. What other structure that we have studied fits this similar concept? If you guessed the ziggurat, you would be correct. It's the same set of ideas. The idea that the temple, the ziggurat, was placed in the center, it was elevated above the city, and it also was dedicated to that city's patron deity. Now, you can see that the Acropolis is made up of numerous structures. We are not going to look at all of them. We'll look mostly at the Erechtheion, which is over here, the Parthenon, of course, and very briefly we'll look at the Propylaea. This is the temple of Athena Nike, this little baby temple right here, which we will not be covering, but it is covered in your textbook, and then also the Chakoteke, which was used to store bronze. It's functioned kind of like a treasury. So here is a view, it's this right in here, of the Propylaea. And the Propylaea was the gateway to the Acropolis. And so we know that if there is a gateway, that there is a level of control and access as to who would be permitted to enter into this very sacred and very important space. Now, it does not seem that there is the level of exclusion that we see with Egyptian temples, for example, which pretty much nobody could enter into except for pharaohs and except for priests. Here there is a little bit more of an open access, although there is a level of control. The Propylaea essentially functioned as this very dramatic entry point and a very official entry point to the Acropolis itself. And as you can see, it's kind of a trek, I'll tell you. You kind of go up this hill and you make your way up, and then you enter in through the gateway. And that's the temple of Athena Nike right there, little baby temple. Okay, the Parthenon. The Parthenon is probably one of the most important structures that the Greeks built, and certainly it is the most well-known. When many people think of the ancient Greek culture, this structure, the Parthenon, generally comes to mind. This temple, there's a lot of things to note here, but this temple reflects what really is the standard temple type that we see being produced in ancient Greece. The convenient thing about studying Greek temples is that they pretty much all appear to be the same in the sense that they follow the same basic format. And that format, I call it the 2-to-1 format, and basically it's the length is twice the width. So here's the width here, and the length, although it's deceiving in this photograph, is twice this. So it's a very deliberate shape of the floor plan of this perfect rectangular shape. So 2-to-1. The other very consistent feature of the Greek temple is the fact that the colonnade, the row of columns, there's your spelling there for colonnade, the colonnade, the row of columns, extends all the way around the exterior of the structure. The visual effect of this is that there is no emphasized entryway. There's no clear place that's indicated as the point of entry. Now, this is an important thing to put into your notes because this is going to be a point of contrast when we study Roman temples. They do have an emphasized entryway, something that is not seen with Greek structures. Now, if you look, you can see that there's columns inside as well. These are not roomy interiors that we see in the Greek temples, and that's because the temples were conceived of as being homes for the gods, not homes for the worshiper. This idea that a religious space is built to house an individual while they are worshiping a god, that actually is not really a common feature of a religious structure until the emergence of Christianity. At this point, these really are simply meant to be homes for the gods, and any worship that's being done by people would take place at the immediate exterior. So we have then the two things you want to remember is the 2-to-1 formula, twice the width for the length, and then the colonnade that extends all the way around. There are some other architectural features. We've covered the entablature. So there's the entablature right there, which sits along this colonnade. And can you guess the order? It is Doric order, plain capitals, as you can see. So we've got our Doric order colonnade, on top of which sits the entablature. This up here is our frieze. And then this up here, here's your spelling, pediment, is this triangular roof that you see. And there is a triangular roof over here as well. Pediment, and you can see from this little sculpture fragment, this originally also is displaying sculpture. And on a Greek temple, these are the two primary sites that you would find sculpture, on the pediment and in the frieze. Now, when the Parthenon was built, it was built according to concepts of perfection because it was believed that the only type of structure appropriate for the goddess Athena is a structure that is perfect. It is harmonious, it is well balanced, it is beautiful visually, all of these things rolled into one. And the way that they were able to achieve this, in theory, is through geometry. And you'll notice in this class that geometry figures in rather prominently when we're talking about structures that are intended to be perfect or to convey or communicate a sense of perfection. And the way that they did this with the Parthenon was through what was known as the golden mean. The golden mean was a ratio. It also was an algebraic equation. And this is not math class, so you don't need to know the math. But the math was used to create perfect absolute proportions. Now, the reason why I said earlier in theory is because visually that mathematical perfection didn't quite make sense. And so they had to go in and do a little bit of fudging to make it look perfect, even though it wasn't. And so you have some playing around with the spacing of the columns here, 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 and here. And it actually takes away from the mathematical accuracy, but it does promote a visual accuracy. So I think in the end they kind of met in the middle, and they gave Athena a structure that was pretty much geometrically perfect and pretty much visually perfect as well. And I'm very sure that she appreciated the effort and having such a beautiful structure created for her. Now, I want to show you just one example. There are many others in your book. One example of sculpture, relief sculpture that was found on the exterior of the Parthenon. And it's this very well-known piece of sculpture known as Marshals and Young Women. Now, scholars are debating, but they do believe that this is a depiction of the Pan-Athenaic procession. And you don't need to write that down in your notes. You could just note that this generally, it's just basically a religious procession. I'm fine with that. It's a depiction of a religious procession. And one of the things that's really interesting about the Parthenon is in terms of the sculptural program, you do see a lot of representations of gods, particularly Athena, which we would anticipate since it is a temple dedicated to the gods. But we do also see the everyday Athenian people represented quite prominently on the Parthenon as well. And that is rather noteworthy because you don't generally see representations of everyday people, most certainly not on the most important religious structure in all of Athens. And what this is communicating is that the Athenian people saw that not only was Athena important to her, or that Athena was important to them, but they were in turn important to Athena. So with the Pan-Athenaic procession, it was believed to have been held every 4 years, and the procession would start in the agora, which was the marketplace, and then in this very sort of ordered and stately manner, the participants would have offerings, and they would transport these offerings marching through the agora, up the steps, through the propylaea, and then the procession would terminate at the Parthenon. And so this is a great work of art because they utilize the formal element of repetition. And so you see the similarities of the robes, and that attracts the eye, and the eye sort of moves across. And it does so in this very ordered and stately way that mimics the orderly and stately manner of the procession. So a great example of formal qualities used to support and help with the communication of the message. Now I bring this up too because this is actually going to prominently figure into another work of art we're going to look at later that was produced during the Roman Empire. And then finally, we'll take a look at the Erechtheion, also as you can see here known as the Erechtheion. Either one of these is fine. And what's noteworthy about the Erechtheion is that it actually goes against the standard temple type that I explained to you in the when we were talking about the Parthenon. The idea that the temple's length is exactly twice the width, and that you've got a colonnade going all the way around. The result is that the building looks the same from all sides, perfectly symmetrical, no entryway apparent. As you can see here, the Erechtheion is not following that prototype where we do not have column extending all the way around. The floor plan actually is irregular and there is a lack of symmetry. As I said, extremely rare to see a Greek temple that would look in this way. Now you might wonder why. Well, why do we see a structure that departs so significantly from the norm of temple design? And there's two possibilities that both or one could be explaining. First of all, the Erechtheion is built on an area of the Acropolis where the topography is rather uneven. And so having a perfect rectangularly shaped structure actually would not be physically possible. And you can even see it how the structure kind of is descending down, almost kind of like along the side of the hill as the hill sort of decreases. So it's an irregular topography which dictates an irregular architectural design. The other thing though, and this is very rare, is that this temple actually was dedicated to multiple deities which necessitated multiple shrines. And it also even had a tomb in it. The tomb belonged to the former king of Athens, Erechtheion, which the structure was named after. So it needed multiple spaces to fit in with these multiple functions. Now, with the Erechtheion, the most well-known feature is the Porch of the Maidens, which we see right here. And here's a detail. And these are some incredible sculptures. Now, we're not looking at the originals. Thankfully, the originals were removed and they're safely stored in the Acropolis Museum, which is located at the base of the Acropolis. These, though, are replicas so that we can get the idea of what they once looked like. These are what are called caryatids. And here's your spelling right here, caryatids. And a caryatid is essentially a column that has been replaced by a female form. And you do need to note female form in your notes because there actually is a different name if the column is in male form. And that name is Atlantid. And Atlantid is a column in male form, caryatid column in female form. Now this is a great set of sculptures to look at, especially if we can compare them to the Archaic period Kore figure, because you can start to see the ways in which sculpture changed between the Archaic and the Classical periods. In the Archaic period, what's ironic is that the Kore figure is more column-like than what we're seeing here with the Caryatids. She stands straight, knees locked. Beneath this heavy fall of the drapery, you're not seeing any indication of like a knee or any kind of legs or whatever. It's just this mass of stone. She appears to be very stiff. Now here we have the knee poking forward. And you've learned about this, or you will learn about this in a different lecture, depending on the order that you watch this. Contrapposto stance. The contrapposto stance, the knee poking forward. And basically what this does is it gives the form a more realistic and more relaxed positioning. We humans don't usually stand super still with arms at the side, knees locked, as we see with the Kore figure. This is a more realistic representation of form. So they appear to be relaxed, more realistic, and then look at this incredible drapery. This is stone, and it looks like this really transparent, soft, sort of wispy cloth. It's incredible. And so the drapery is much more realistic. Here we have like two thick folds, perfectly the same size, symmetrical, not at all a realistic representation of the way that we would expect cloth to look like. This is more realistic. When we wear cloth on our bodies, it bunches, it folds, it wrinkles, and it also many times functions to reveal form, where here the cloth sort of falls around the breasts and it bunches at the waist, and we get an idea of this three-dimensional form that is beneath this mass of clothing. We really don't get that idea with the Kore figure. You'll also see that the hair is treated differently in a more realistic manner than the stylized braids of the Archaic period. And then you'll also notice that the Archaic smile has gone away. We are now in the Classical period where we no longer see the Archaic smile. And so what we're left with then is we're left with these sculptures of these women that are very realistic. They are very beautiful. And they create this sense of lightness to the overall structure, in the sense that their primary task is to hold up the very heavy stone entablature, and with the knee poking forward, suggesting relaxation, it almost as if they hold up this entablature without expending a lot of effort. It's effortless, and it makes the building seem not quite as heavy and imposing.